husband also gets your emails and forwards them to me. Very interesting. Okay, real quickly. To refresh your memory, last week Tom Rance showed a video clip of someone from your office arguing before the Ohio Medical Board that Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who practices in Cleveland, should be stripped of her medical license. The lawyer argued before the board that Dr. Tenpenny would not be allowed to hear the content of any complaint against her, as well as argue that Dr. Tenpenny not be afforded due process under the law regarding how she treated her patients when they had COVID-19. My question is, why was she not allowed due process, and why did she have her license suspended?
Two great questions, and I'm happy to answer. So first of all, how many, just a show of hands, how many people have seen this story somewhere? Okay. This comes from her defense lawyer, who does his own podcast, and guess what? He's got a particular point of view, and he didn't win. So I just ask you, before you accept what he says at face value, recognize that he's got an interest here. He's got a client that he's representing. Now, let me answer your question directly. Nobody argued against her receiving due process. It didn't happen. And we provided to Just the News. Anybody listen to Just the News with John Solomon? Yeah? They've got they wrote about this, and they've got the entire audio transcript. So if you want to listen to it, you can for yourself. What you need to understand, let's start at the top. This is not a criminal complaint. She was not charged with anything that would create a Fifth Amendment right. So, you know the old thing on TV, right? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against it. That whole Miranda warning doesn't apply. This is an administrative hearing. What's the difference between administrative and criminal? There's a bunch of them, but here's one of the things that you need to know, and I'm gonna compare it to something that we're all familiar with: drunk driving law. See, you've got a license to drive in Ohio. Now, if you get pulled over for drunk driving, there's two separate things going on here. First, there is a criminal aspect, and you have every right to due process. You don't have to say a word, you know, blah, blah, blah. You've got every piece of the defense machinery there for you. And the state has to prove you're guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and they should. So that's that. Then there's an administrative proceeding, because you see you've got a driver's license. And when you signed up for your driver's license, some of that fine print that they make you sign at the BMV, it says that you agree as a condition of your driver's license to take a breathalyzer if you're asked to do so by one of Chief Vendor's officers, for example. If you don't, they can suspend your license. They do suspend your license automatically for a year. Mm-hmm. Now, you're still not guilty. They still haven't convicted you of drunk driving. None of that has happened. None of it's changed. It's simply a function of your license that if you don't cooperate with the police and take the breathalyzer, you lose your license for a year. Now, let's fast forward to Dr. Tenpenny. There were a bunch of complaints, citizen complaints, that came in. People calling in and saying, how does this person have a license? Folks, let me tell you, I get, as the Attorney General, the same people calling in to my licensing board saying, how does this guy still have a license? I have a responsibility when the disciplinary council calls me, no matter how kooky their questions are, to answer. Tell them what happened. Answer any follow-up questions they have. Provide documents if they request them. And if they don't, I've got a problem with my disciplinary board. Now, under the law, you don't get those complaints from citizens are not made public. And that makes sense, actually, because if they were made public, there might be reprisals. Doctors and lawyers and accountants and architects and engineers and all these other licensed people are powerful people. They could take reprisals against you. But it's also important for the professionals, because any wacko can call in and say, hey, Dave Yost is an idiot and you ought to take his license. And should my reputation be changed or damaged because that becomes public? So complaints are protected. Fast forward, the medical board calls up Dr. Tenpenny and says, hey, you didn't answer our questions that we sent you in the mail. Would you come in and sit down with us in the office? And her lawyer says, no, we're not doing that. We're not talking to you. This is a witch hunt. We're not doing it. Well, she has every right to do that, but as a condition of her license, she had to cooperate with her licensing board, just like I would, and just like you would if you were asked to take a breathalyzer. You can lose your license. Her license was suspended because she refused to cooperate with her licensing authority. And that's all that was. The line that you heard quoted by Tom Renz was, she's not entitled to the complaints. It's not the complaint against her. She absolutely had that complaint against her that she refused to cooperate. It was the citizen complaints that are protected by statute. Now, we can change that. If you can convince the General Assembly that they shouldn't be protected by statute and they're public record, that's a potential, you could do that. But that's not what the law is today, and I uphold the law as it is. So that's the full story of what had happened. You can like it or not, but it was according to Hoyle.
Okay, last three questions. All right, these three.
Oh my goodness, it's past my bedtime.
Thank you for coming, Attorney General Yost. I have